In Vlog 7, we cover a very important topic, the positivity of negativity, a paradoxical twist in thinking. It's the natural inclination of the human mind, we might say, to align itself in relationship with something, an object of some kind or a process of some kind. We can give examples from the foundations of philosophy where Parmenides grounds philosophical thinking in relationship to absolute being, or Democritus grounds our thinking in relationship to atoms, both conceived of as eternal. We can also go to major thought traditions in both science and philosophy, such as materialism, which aligns thought with the material world, or with logical positivism, which asserts that we should only study what is positively existing in reality. However, there is a well-known positivist problem, as it were. This is the idea that when you study merely something, you align thought with positively existing content, you end up in a type of frozen frame of reference. This doesn't allow us to understand temporality and movement on a fundamental level. In other words, you may be allowed, or you may be able, to marshal an understanding of what positively exists, but you cannot explain how this positively existing substance becomes, changes, emerges, and perhaps most importantly, how something new can come into being. At the ground of this problem, which is well known in both physics and philosophy, and specifically the philosophy of physics, is a type of background dependence. Background dependence means that our thinking must always have a particular background. In physics, for example, the background is absolute space-time. This means that in physics, it's very difficult to write out the fundamental equations of quantum mechanics unless you presuppose an absolute background of space-time. Other traditions which align thought with something, presupposing something, also fall into similar traps. This is why some philosophical traditions, perhaps most notably starting with Hegel, start to tarry with negativity. In other words, they do not presuppose something, but instead focus on the experience and the reality of nothing. Here, paradoxically, nothingness, or the void, becomes a productive object. In some of these philosophical traditions, the nothingness or the void is in fact the condition for movement, the condition for becoming and change. Far from going against materialism and the fundamental philosophical foundations of materialism, tarrying with negativity does not presuppose some transcendental substance, and even from the ground of Democritus's idea of atoms, he admitted that the condition for the movement of the atoms must be the opposite of atoms, not something else, but nothing itself, the void. We can even consult our own experience of tarrying with negativity. For example, it's well known that when one imagines death or one conceives one's own death, one becomes more aware and more brutally conscious of your own mortality and your own finitude. If this conjuring of the image of death is done properly, it can even be a great motivating factor and a great stimulus for radical change, radical emergence, the emergence of something new. This brings us to the overall lesson of incorporating nothing into our study of something, which is that our knowledge becomes properly dialectical. This means that you can never just study one thing without also including its opposite. The opposite of a thing is, in some sense, focusing on the interaction and the movement of something itself. In this way, knowledge is not just a dead tree of knowledge, studying some static, frozen frame which has a eternal background dependence, but rather your knowledge becomes something that is itself alive, moving, open to change, open to itself becoming something totally different, which you could never anticipate or predict ahead of time. To summarize it in its most simple way, one's knowledge, when one becomes dialectical, is that knowledge itself becomes fluid and changing. And the real in which one is tarrying is in fact no identity at all, and this is the most real. In other words, one does not labor under the delusion that one's own knowledge and one's own identity are in some sense eternal, even if this is done unconsciously. Instead, it is admitted that any identity and any set of knowledge will find its truth in its dissolution, back into the nothingness from whence it came. I hope that this overview, the paradoxical positivity of negativity, leading us up to a logical understanding of dialectical knowing, was helpful. Thank you for listening, and thanks for watching.